A History of Southern Missouri and Northern Arkansas by William Monks, published in 1907. Early Settlements, Part 2. As soon as it was possible, the different settlements erected church houses built of hewed timber, floored with puncheons, hewed seats, size of house generally from 18 by 20 to 22 by 25 feet, chinked and daubed. The churches, or denominations, then, were Baptists and Methodists. There didn't appear to be any antagonism or hatred existing between the denominations. The doors were thrown wide open for any minister that might travel through, and they all turned out, and you heard nothing said then in regard to my church or your church. They appeared to recognize the fact that it was the Lord's church and that they were the Lord's people. In going to church, sometimes from 1 to 10 miles, they would see flocks of turkeys and herds of wild deer both going and coming. As soon as the crops were laid by, they would agree among the different settlements as to where a camp meeting should be held. They would then erect camps or huts, make boards to cover them, erect an arbor, fill the center of it with straw, and do the distance of 25 to 35 miles they would all turn out, irrespective of denomination, and all appeared to enjoy themselves, and the love of Christ appeared to dwell in each heart, and they appeared to be proud of the privilege of meeting each other and worshiping together. If any member belonging to either of the denominations defrauded or in any way wronged his brother, he was at once waited upon and requested to make reparation to his brother and acknowledge to his brother and to the church, or he was withdrawn from or turned out of the church. The immigration was chiefly from the Middle States, some from the Southern States, and very few from the Northeastern States. They were frugal, energetic, honest, intelligent, and industrious. As the country increased in population, the facilities of both schools and churches improved. The customs and habits were entirely different from those existing now. The wearing apparel was entirely homemade. They would raise their cotton, pick it out with their fingers or a hand gin. Women would spin their warp, spin their filling, get their different colors from different barks for men's wear. The women used indigo and copperas for the main colors in manufacturing the cloth for dresses, wound their stripes on a stick and then wove it into cloth. You could scarcely visit a house but what you would see a loom, big spinning wheel, and little wheel. Sometimes you would see 3 or 4 wheels in one house. They made both their everyday and Sunday wear. The women appeared to take great pride in seeing who could weave the nicest piece of cloth, make it into a dress, make cloth, and make it into what was known as Virginia bonnets. And the men tanned their own leather, made shoes for the whole family. When the women were dressed completely in their homespun, they appeared to enjoy themselves in church, in company, or any other gathering, and felt just as independent and proud as the king upon his throne. They appeared to meet each other and greet each other, and all appeared to realize the fact that they were human and they had but one superior, and that was God. The women spun the warp, spun the wool, wove it into cloth, procured the different barks from the woods and dyed it, the general color being brown, made it with their own hands into coats, pants, undershirts, made overshirts out of homespun cotton, and the whole suit was homemade, and very often a cap, made either of the raccoon or a fox, was worn on the head. When men met each other at any public gathering, they appeared to be proud of meeting each other, appeared to realize the fact that they were all American citizens and human, bound together by the ties of love and affection, and the highest ambition appeared to be to make each other happy and help one another in time of need. I don't believe there was as much dissipation by partaking of intoxicants or other wickedness as exists today among the same number of persons. It is true that then any man who was able to purchase a little still and had a spring could erect his own still house and make his own whiskey without paying any tax or duty upon the same. And any one of his neighbors who wanted a gallon of whiskey could carry a bushel of corn to the still house and get a gallon of whiskey in exchange for it. And if men became drunk on the whiskey, it did not appear to make them wild and crazy as the whiskey of today does. Men then, as well as now, would have disagreements and fall out and fight, but the custom that prevailed among that class would not tolerate nor allow a man to use weapons, and if two men had a disagreement, one of them being a large, stout man physically, the other being a small man, not equal in strength, if they were together in a public place and a large one would challenge the weaker to fight him, before he could hardly open his mouth, some man present who considered himself to be his equal in physical strength would just say to him, "Now then, if you want to fight, that man is not your equal, but I am. Get your second and walk out, and I will do the fighting for this other man." I have on different occasions seen the large man who was challenging the weaker for a fight reply to the challenge and say, "My friend, I have nothing against you. This other man hasn't treated me right," or set out some other reason that he ought to whip him. The man in reply would say, "I don't want to hear another word from you in regard to wanting to fight this other man, and if I do, you have got me to fight." Very often I have seen the man shut his mouth and turn away and say nothing more. On the other hand, I have heard a man say to another, "If you want to fight, I am your man." The other man is unable to fight you, and in an instant the other would reply, "Well, sir, I am your man, just as lief fight you as anybody else." They would select their seconds, take a drink of whiskey together, enter into an agreement that whenever the second said either one was whipped, that they were to abide by it, unless they found out before their seconds did that they were whipped, and if so, they would manifest it by hollowing, "Enough!" when the other person was to stop at once and inflict no more injury. I have often seen them fight until they were both as bloody as butchers, and in the end the seconds would have to hullo for one or the other. As soon as they were separated, they would go to the same pool or place where there was water and wash themselves, and walk arm in arm, laughing and talking and drinking together, and remark, "We are now fast friends, and we have settled the matter as to which was the best man." And if a man would produce a weapon on either side, his own friends would turn against him, and he would be forced to put it up at once. Men then appeared to be governed by that higher inspiration, that a man should not use anything that would permanently disable or take the life of his fellow man. But if one man became pregnant with fight or desire to maim his fellow man, in order that he should not be disappointed, some man would readily volunteer, who believed that he was his equal physically, and deliver him of all his fighting propensities.